This is a historic event in that sense that we have managed to take the views of across the spectrum of the British Kashmiri diaspora from all the regions of Jammu and Kashmir. And I would like to, I'm pleased to report that from all the regions means that Jammu, Ladakh, Gilgit-Baltistan, Pakistani administered Kashmir and British Kashmiri diaspora has contributed in the development of this manifesto. And we have unanimously agreed on those 5 points which we want to advance as a starting point for our struggle and our public policy advocacy as well as citizen diplomacy in the United Kingdom to advance these 5 points, and we are seeking support from our honourable members of the Parliament to help us to contribute in getting social justice within the UK and bringing just peace in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, I would like to thank and extend a special thank to Mr. Simon Danczuk, who is the host of this parliamentary reception today, and he will share with us a little bit later his thoughts and his views. He has significantly contributed and helped and guided us in the development of this manifesto, and on behalf of Kashmir Development Foundation and all the Kashmiri community, I put my sincere thanks on record for him. And I would like now to invite John Hemming MP from the Birmingham to share his views with us. John Hemming MP.
Thank you for inviting me here to the launch of the manifesto. I would like to highlight one issue, which is human rights abuses, because wherever you have conflicts, there is always a danger that you get. You to take the event, it was very sad and tragic event in Peshawar at the school. I met one of the fathers of the children who was murdered there. And the problem with those, you get those extreme actions when there's a conflict between two groups of people, whatever it may be. And the way towards peace is to deal with human rights abuses and try and control things so that the temperature goes down. Because the difficulty in terms of getting peace and justice is if there is great anger, it is very difficult to get to a resolution that is acceptable. And if you look at, say, for instance, the situation in Israel, where the Netanyahu is facing both ways on a dual-state solution, the anger that is there on both sides in itself means that any negotiations get sabotaged even if people don't admit it. So I always focus here on 5A, human rights, which is if you need to get the UN involved, you need to really focus. There's some work, very good work being done on a dossier of incidents in Indian occupied Kashmir. Some very good work has been done on that. We need to be getting more attention. Just because there's no oil, just because it's a long way from the UK, there's no reason why people should ignore human rights in Kashmir. And I always want to bring that to the fore, because that is how we, across the world, we emphasise human rights, that everybody is equal, people, their rights need to be respected. If people are abused, there needs to be a process to hold the abusers to account, those who are assaulting people, whatever it may be. That is the direction towards peace and justice throughout the world. It's the most important thing in many ways, because without that you don't get sensible negotiation. But thank you for inviting me to endorse your manifesto. I'm sorry, I need to go off and do other things.
Okay, thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Now I would like to request one of the most senior British Kashmiri diaspora politician, as well as one of our role model, Ajib Saab. Mr. Muhammad Ajib is one of the first Lord Mayor of the Asian and Kashmiri heritage in the United Kingdom, who has set an example in civic service and in political life, and then many more have the opportunities and the door he has opened for many more politicians then led to the members of the Parliament from the Kashmiri heritage. I would like to ask him to share with his journey, which we are now taking forward through this British Kashmiri diaspora. Mr. Muhammad Ajib.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Can I first of all thank very sincerely Simon Danczuk from Rochdale for giving his most valuable time to come and be with us this afternoon. As we all know that these days are overwhelmingly very busy indeed for all the members of Parliament, because after about 3-4 weeks there is going ready to spare some time. I think it's difficult to do that. Thank you very much indeed. I have been in this country for more than half a century, and during all these years, one way or the other, the British Kashmiris have tried to influence the ultimate solution to this perpetual conflict which has been going on first between India and Pakistan since 1947-48, and then obviously the most important partner in this whole sort of process have been the Kashmiris themselves on both sides of the borders. And in all these years, as we know that they have sacrificed their lives, about nearly 150,000 people have lost their lives during this struggle. And I think that now it seems to me that here in Britain, the British Kashmiris have arrived at a consensus, and I'm pleased to be able to tell you that we want a peaceful solution at the end of the day of this country. Too much blood has been has gone into the streets of Kashmir, and I think it's still the people out there, they haven't been able to make any significant progress in this regard. Our aim is to persuade, first of all, the British Parliamentarians here in this country, and our population here is approximately now reaching 800,000 in Britain. And I think that that's a quite large segment of British society, and we are becoming the integral part of British society. And we want to strive for, as I said, an ultimate solution to this conflict through peaceful means. And that means that our struggle from now onwards will be based on using all the possible means at our disposal to promote justice and peace in both parts of the Kashmiri land. But now John has gone, but I would have, if he had stayed here, I would have pointed out to him that there is no peace, as they say, without justice. So we've got to make sure that first thing is the justice prevails in that particular part of the world. And the people of Kashmir have been seeking and trying their best to find proper justice to their cause. And the cause is that they want to exercise their birthright of self-determination. So these are, I think, two main things I think we are trying to emphasize to the politicians of our country. Thank you.
May I now invite our host and Fabian Danczuk MP for Rochdale, who has been a strong supporter of the initiatives which we have took from the Kashmir Development Foundation as we based in Rochdale. So Fabian Danczuk, thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll stand up if you don't mind. Is it okay? Let me start by saying good afternoon to everybody and welcome to the launch of the Kashmiri Manifesto for this general election that is on the 7th of May, and also welcome to Parliament as well. It's great to see so many of you here. I'm really pleased to be able to welcome you to this event, and I want to pay tribute to Aftab and to the Kashmir Development Foundation for all the work that you've been doing. It's very important. For those who don't know KDF, it is a fantastic organisation working with the British Kashmiri population to address problems both here in the United Kingdom but also obviously in Kashmir itself. And I'm really proud to be able to say that it's based very much in Rochdale and has a strong presence in my constituency. First of all, I'd like to start by saying why I think it's so important that we have a specific Kashmiri manifesto running up to this general election. It always amazes me how overlooked the Kashmiri population are here in the United Kingdom. And this is something I've spoke a lot on with Councillor Dalatale, who I'm very pleased to be able to see here this afternoon. We've had many a conversation about how important the Kashmiri population is. It's 1 in 4 of the Muslim population in this country, 1/4 of the British population, Muslim population. And obviously contribute regularly, pay the taxes, contribute to our economy. But the true accuracy of the statistic, this 1 in 4, can never really be known. We can't know the accuracy of it, quite simply, because it is not included. There is not a question in the United Kingdom census, so we can't be sure of those statistics. British Kashmiris play a major role in the social, political, cultural, economic and religious life of the United Kingdom. The Kashmiri people, proud, hard workers who have brought a taste of Kashmir to our cities and to our towns. We have 3 members of the Commons of Kashmiri origin. In addition, Kashmiris hold hundreds of positions as local councillors across the country and heavily influence our over 30 constituencies at election time. And yet still, the voices of British Kashmiris are overlooked. One of the key reasons is because there is no official recognition of the Kashmiri identity on the census in the United Kingdom. This may seem a minor point, but it's the root of a lot of major issues, as Dalit has often pointed out to me. Because of this injustice, British Kashmiris are often grouped with British Pakistanis or Indians, even if they might have very different concerns and problems. In my own constituency of Rochdale, the vast majority of people of Kashmiri origin live in the most deprived wards, it's fair to say. They therefore often struggle in terms of educational opportunities, and they're often underrepresented in terms of being at the top of professions. I've heard from people in my own constituency that unemployment in Kashmiri communities can be very high, maybe as high as 60 or even 70% in some areas. It's also the case that people in these communities are disproportionately likely to rely on state benefits and more likely to be extremely economically deprived. Evidence from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation supports these conclusions. To address these kinds of problems, you need to be able to measure and diagnose them first. That's what's important. That's why recording Kashmiri identity, or not recording it, is so damaging for me, David. So what we need to do is record it. It's troubling that while the census is forgetting about Kashmiris are being told that their ethnic identity is not valid. Many Kashmiris have an incredibly strong sense of ethnic identity. They do not want to be counted as Pakistani or as Indian, because this is not how they think of themselves. So I think this issue of ethnic representation really is very important, and I'm glad that KDF are campaigning on it. I was pleased to be able to hold a debate on this very issue in the House of Commons just last year, and we raised it with the Minister. But this manifesto isn't just about the British Kashmiri population. It's also about the situation in Kashmir itself. The lack of attention that's paid to Kashmir in this Parliament really is quite shocking. Not only because of the large population in the UK who care deeply about the situation there, but also because of its wider global significance. Compared to other global conflicts, such as Palestine or Ukraine, we hardly ever hear about Kashmir. This gives me real cause for concern, and that's why this manifesto is so helpful. The reality is that Kashmir remains one of the most militarised places in the world. Large parts of the region operate as a police state where the authorities completely disregard the rule of law. The line of control acts as an invisible barrier separating communities, stifling trade and breeding resentment. The way in which human rights are routinely disregarded, as John Hemming was saying, is truly appalling. I recently met a human rights campaigner from Kashmir called Parvina a hang-on. Only on the 18th of August 1990, Parvina's son Javid was abducted by the Indian Army. I think it's a well-known story. He was obviously considered to be a militant, and mistaken for a militant, just 17 years old. Since that day, there's been no sign of Javid, but Parvina has not given up hope of finding him. She has been campaigning on this issue ever since, not just for her son, but for the 10,000 other Kashmiris who have been disappeared by the authorities. Meeting this extraordinary woman was honestly one of the most moving experiences I have had as a Member of Parliament, and it has strengthened my resolve to push this issue up the agenda. Parvina in many ways is a symbol for the whole region, because when you look at the situation on the ground in Kashmir, you may see suffering, but not resignation. The capacity of Kashmiris to hope and to work for change is extraordinary and is an example to us all. When I hear about some of the work going on in Kashmir today, I am filled with optimism. Examples such as Conciliation Resources, a charity that are building links across the line of control, really does encourage trade between the two communities and builds opportunities, it builds tolerance, and it builds peace. So there are some pluses, there are some positives that are going on in terms of Kashmir. But what we also need are discussions that can often seem remote in places like Westminster. And I do believe there are things that our government can do more to make a difference. Most obviously, we must be clear with the military authorities on both sides that we take these human rights violations seriously. We must put pressure on both India and Pakistan, not only to stop abuses, but also to reform the laws which let the army act in this way. For example, we must be clear with India that the Armed Forces Special Powers Act is unacceptable. There is also more we can do in terms of at a diplomatic level. We need to help people there on the ground. For example, I am of the view that the UK should be using our international aid budget to support grassroots civil society organisations in Kashmir. Peace in the region will only happen from the ground up, not be imposed from above. We need to recognise that and work towards it. We also need to work closely with the large Indian, Pakistani and Kashmiri diasporas in the UK on aid and development. And some work has already been done, not least by the Kashmir Development Foundation. I want to finish by again paying tribute to the work that's being done in the United Kingdom for Kashmir. It really is very important, both on the domestic and global stage. Politicians here in the UK need to get involved, and I believe this manifesto is a good way of driving Kashmir up the political agenda. It's vital that us politicians engage in a proper dialogue with the Kashmiri population. We need them to know that their concerns are our concerns and their struggles are our struggles. So I hope the message spreads over the next few weeks, and I know there is a lot of work to be done after the election. But for today, I am very happy to endorse this manifesto and urge all my colleagues to do the same. Thank you very much, Aftab.
Thank you very much, Simon. And I now would like to ask one of the prospective candidates, because this manifesto is obviously for all the candidates who are standing in the elections. And I welcome David Ward MP, who has consistently supporting the Kashmir issue and the resolution of Kashmir issue, and empowering the many of the British Kashmiri activists in many ways and forms, which is very welcome. And particularly from Kashmir Development Foundation point of view, David has kindly assisted us in shaping and forming our views as well as our practices. And when the last time we came over here, he particularly gave 2 pieces of advice. And from May till today, Simon and David, I'm pleased to report back that we have listened carefully those advices, we've taken on board, we went back and we assessed our capacity, and we have delivered a leadership training program in Manchester in January, where we have trained 20 of our board members as well as our volunteers, 20 of them from the Institute of Leadership and Management, to understand the whole work and the agenda which we are working towards. And one of our trainees who have attended one of the course is with us today, and she went on and joined the Green Party, and now she is the Green Party candidate from the Luton North. And I welcome Sophia Aman to share her views on the particularly this British Kashmiri Manifesto, and how she and her party would take this forward. Sophia.
Well, I want to talk first about, just because before joining the Green Party or anything, I started the Kashmiri student campaign. So what I really want to talk about is what British Kashmiri youth need and want. And from a youth campaign perspective, what we've been focusing on is raising awareness about human rights abuses there, but also the development of the community here in the UK. And we really need positive action to raise the aspirations of the youth and see themselves presented in a positive way. And it's important that we have more quality access to education. So most the areas that Kashmiris are heavily populated, the education services there tend to be very, very low, well below average. And I don't understand why, because there's been low standards for a decade now. I don't understand why there hasn't been more serious action by central government to address that over decades now. And we can see in places like Bradford, where I don't know if it's in your actual constituency, but there were youth services cuts recently, and then the young people there campaigned against that though and reversed a lot of those cuts are imposed. So it shows that young Kashmiris, they are politically engaged. They do want to get involved in things when they do feel that it is going to impact them. And we just need to provide more opportunities for them to really develop themselves and go forward with these kinds of initiatives. And of course with that is the representation of themselves, so they need to have themselves presented in a positive way. And recently in the documentary by Trevor Phillips, where he just smeared the British Mibri, the males particularly, and produced old stereotypes about them. And I found it really confusing why a documentary is taking up this term Mibri now. Like, since when is Mibri its own country? You know, it's a derogatory term, and they shouldn't be using that on mainstream media. Like, when we talk about the Bengali community, we don't start talking about Siletis, because a lot of them come from Sylhet. We don't start talking about them like that though. And we are Kashmiri people. When we say that we're from Azad Kashmir, we don't say we're from Azad Nipur, you know? So British Kashmiris already have an identity crisis, and we really need to try to not complicate that further, and try to make them come to terms with their identity, and not start coming up with terms that we really need to, when it comes in the media, we need to message the media, we need to lobby them, and we need to get young people involved with doing that and changing that narrative, because it's becoming very mainstream now. Before it was just in our own communities, like Pakistanis would call me please, whatever, but now it's becoming really mainstream, and that's very dangerous, I think, for what our campaign is trying to achieve. And so the main things that I see from a youth perspective here in the UK is the main thing we need to focus on is education of our youth, and raising the standards in areas where there are high Kashmiri population, and also investing in youth services, and changing the narrative about our community in the way that we're presented in the media.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to welcome Clive Betts MP, the chair of Communities and Local Government Committee. Welcome in this meeting. And afterward I would invite him as well. But before that one, I would request my friend and a great friend of Kashmir, David Ward MP.
Thank you very much indeed, and it's good to be here. I'm sorry I was late. Did I get the wrong time? I'm not used to meetings starting on time. I must say,
no, this is Kashmir Development Foundation.
You completely fooled me. That was a real trick. But I am pleased to be here. I've actually just been talking of youth services with a youth group from Bradford for about the last hour, and these are young people in a youth centre that we want to try and protect right next to a school that I know very well. but it's been like herding kittens with about a dozen of these young people as we showed them around so that's why I was a little bit late, I'm sorry. And I am really, really pleased to be back with the KDF in a meeting, because I've told many people about the meeting. It had quite an impact on me the last time we met down in the Jubilee Room,
Yes.
I believe. And I firmly believe that the work that you're doing is of real significance, and I'd like to be just in 38 days or so, if we manage to get that out of the way successfully, then, or even if we don't, then I would like to actually continue to work with you on a much closer basis. I remember saying I went to it was a Macbull that event in Dewsbury, I think it was, back in obviously in February. And someone said at that meeting that they thought there were 31 different Kashmiri groups of one form or another. And there is a desperate need for groups to come together and speak with one voice. And it is the old thing about, you know, the weak fingers but the strong fists. People can come together and work together. And I think you have the basis for providing the kernel, if you like, for groups to gather around, because your approach is, I believe, very, very practical approach. And I am a very, very practical person, I have to tell you. And I was dreading, when I saw the manifesto, before reading it, I have to say, I thought, oh no, please just don't have a sentence in there on self-determination and a plebiscite. Please, please. It's got to be something practical, something that people can actually get behind and can, in a practical way, do something for the people who are suffering in Kashmir. And this is what this contains. So I was delighted to read through it. And some of the bits in it that I am particularly, yes, there's the ascription, the identification, the identity which you mentioned before. And this applies to many groups, I have to tell you. I met a group of Rohingyans last week who was saying very much, said, how can you actually identify, how can you evaluate the conditions of any particular ethnic group if they just join together with lots of others? So that's a clear aspiration that needs to be worked on. What I also like about this is the investing in the development of infrastructure for peace, conflict, transformation in all the regions as well, because people in a very, very loose way talk about Kashmir as if every single part of Kashmir is exactly the same, everybody has the same aspirations, and of course it doesn't. It's made up of different parts which themselves are very, very different. Ethnically, religiously, they are different. And so the idea that somehow this vote could take place and would come out with something that the losers would accept, when we know they wouldn't, and would be a way of bringing peace to the area, is just foolish. It will not occur. And this recognises the fact that you need to actually be working with each of the region in terms of what those regions, the districts themselves, require for support. I'm also pleased that it talks about investing in AJK, because the risk of offending maybe some people, as it is, my understanding, is free. It's not free. AJK is not free. It's not free of Pakistan. And I think that we do need to be looking at what is currently happening, and the idea that somehow in Jammu and Kashmir we can have some resolution and that everything will be perfect, when we still have the issue of greater autonomy required for the people of AJK as well. And that's recognised in here as well. And then the area which I think I may have spoken about before when I met you, and this is the area that I would really, the area I'd like to dedicate myself if I'm successful in 38 days or whatever it is this confidence building measures across the piece. And it's something that I'm looking to try and do now in Palestine and Israel, to bring together those who are seeking peace from both sides of the divide. And I see a very, very strong role to play for civic society across the line of control, and practical ways of bringing together some degree, if at all possible, of normality. So instead of having the debate or the argument, the conflict out both sides of the line of control, we can almost rub it out and let people just get back to the normal life of mingling with people and trading and engaging with people on both sides. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted, obviously, to put my name to this endorsement, and I hope that I am around in 6 weeks' time, and hopefully we can meet again and in a practical way work together in the future.
Thank you very much. Can I ask, we just so, we have so far Fabian Hamilton MP. He has signed the commitment to support the manifesto and the 5 points on the agenda, as well as Simon Danczuk and David Ward and John Hammond MP. Sophie, you can sign.
Liz McInnes will.
Yeah.
Middleton has spoken.
That's fine. Now I would like to invite one of the architect and one of the leading members of the Kashmir National Identity Campaign in the UK, who has devoted his life for this cause and contributed and supported us all in our own development and our own thinking and understanding on the issues which Kashmiri community, particularly in the UK, face because of the non-recognition in the local government system. Councillor Dalat Ali from the Rochdale Borough Council.
Thank you, Aftab. So I didn't know I was going to. I think the manifesto it was long overdue. But before I go a bit further on, I would like to give you a quote from my mother, who is 84-year-old, and this was in an interview, and I'll share that with you. But before that, I think, Sophia, my generation, and probably more of our generation, owe an apology to your generation for letting you down, for not reclaiming our identity. And I have no hesitation in saying that people of that generation have been pushing for Muslim identity, Pakistani identity, not Kashmiri identity. And I don't think it was deliberate. I think it was really by default, and then we didn't know what was coming and how things will develop and what have you. And yes, there is a real identity crisis within young people, which needs to be really reclaimed. And I think earlier on, Simon or Mr. Hemming has said, and I think Mr. Ward has said, that there are wishful rhetorics and rhetorics about self-determination. It's what we can do practically. And I think what British Parliament and parliamentarians and councillors like myself and community leaders like Rajiv Saab and Ghulam, the rest of them, can do is to push for inclusion of Kashmiri community, which is, I think, number one on that. And then we need to be included at all levels. And what it is, as a cabinet member myself for community safety and leisure and tourism, what I'm finding out is the prevent agenda, the engagement, and all the rest of it, government has put in a lot of money. And that lot of money is not trickling down to Kashmiri community at all. Kashmiri community continues to live in some excluded enclaves. They find it very hard to integrate. Nobody talks to them. You know, like there are the very people who are supposed to be engaging with so-called Muslim community have got enormous bigotry, like Sophia said earlier on. You know, like me, please. Well, what is a me, please? You know, like, we don't call you down either from the eye or something. You ain't about that. So I won't take a lot of time on that stuff. And then, you know, like, it's a beggar's belief. The very people the government employs to engage with so-called Muslim community or communities have got really derogatory, you know, like, an imperial. And then we are bringing coloniality into Britain really. So the first point would be to include Kashmiris, and that's why I requested Simon Danczuk. I requested Simon Danczuk for our general debate, which is very successfully conducted. The other thing, I mean, we got to be very honest. Sorry, Aftab, you know, okay.
Because Clive have to go.
Right, 2 minutes. We got to be very honest. Our experience, my experience as a councillor, as a cabinet member in Rochdale is, and we were the first one to nip CSE in the bud, and we've got a lot of bad press and good press, and then we've managed to, unlike Rugby, we've managed to get over it. And unfortunately, 80% of those criminals, culprits, were of Kashmiri community. There's no two ways about it. Yeah, I don't apologize, you know, they were. And then we looked at why are they overrepresented, and then we reversed that look, and we're doing some research with Manchester University now. When we reversed that point, we reversed it, they're overrepresented in criminal justice, they're overrepresented in poverty, ignorance, no engagement, so it is in par with everyday life. So why only talk about CSE, which Simon very successfully has done. So we are really getting community down. And then the first point would be, after the election, I think, to nip that in the bud, get Kashmiri the next census. And one of the quotes that I want to say, my mother is 84. Every time she has to go to hospital, my daughters have to take work off time and go with her. And some of the things she don't want to share with them, you know, like grandchildren. And one day she was crying and I said, well, what's mom? Well, what's going on? She said, well, my next door is a Punjabi lady. She gets appropriate interpreter from the NHS. The other one is Indian Gujarati. She does. Why can't I? I said, what do you mean? She says, I was born in United Kashmir, Maharashtra's Kashmir, United Free Kashmir. She says, I was married in divided Kashmir. She said, in this country I came as a Kashmiri. And now people tell me I'm a Muslim, I'm a Pakistani, I'm black, I'm Asian, but nobody is prepared to listen to what I am. They don't listen to my language or whatever. So that's why I say the previous, we might have been Lord Mayors, we might have been councillors, we might have been whatever, we owe apology to our next generation for letting their identity slip in the water. And that's what
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dalat Ali. And now I would like to invite Mr. Clive Betts MP, who is the chair of the Communities and Local Government Select Committee. And one of the issues which we have discussed, obviously, are directly relevant to the Communities and Local Government Department. And one of the ways to hold them to account that how we are addressing those issues in terms of what we communities. Yes, please. Clive, if you can please come over here, I would really appreciate that. As well as we would welcome your support for the British Kashmiri Manifesto. So Clive Betts MP.
Thank you very much, and I apologise for coming in late and having to leave early. It's one of those problems in Parliament where we get invited to so many different events. But despite all the invitations, I did want to come today because it's an issue that I am particularly concerned about, interested in, and have been for many years. I remember first discussing this issue back when I was a then relatively young councillor on Sheffield City Council many years ago, and had excellent tuition in these matters from a very good friend of mine who then became a councillor, sadly no longer with us, Councillor Chowdhury Wilayat, who gave me a lot of advice and information. At the time, when we discussed the matters in the council, the argument was who had the best claim over Kashmir, India or Pakistan? And I actually thought that was an inappropriate choice. The only people who have a claim over Kashmir are the people of Kashmir themselves.
Good.
And in the end, it is a matter for self-determination for them to decide, and that's our long-term objective. And we should never lose sight of that. That seems to me the goal that everyone wants to see. The people of Kashmir have a right to decide themselves on their own government arrangements, and if they want independence and a separate state, that should be something they are entitled to. Now, that aspiration, that goal, that objective seems an awful long way away at present. There isn't any real dialogue taking place, but the impossible, or the seeming impossible, can sometimes become possible in politics. You only have to look at where Germany is today and where Germany was in the 1980s, and who would have thought that the two countries would have come together and the Soviet Union would have allowed it to happen. But it did. It happened. Things change, and they can change rapidly. But I think it's also important, and why I'm really pleased to be here today at this particular event and read your manifesto, and indeed to sign up to this manifesto. I'm more than happy to put my signature to it, and join my good colleague and friend Simon Danczuk, who I know has hosted the event today, is that it seems to me that whatever long-term objectives you have in principle, and the principle is that issue of self-determination and the right of Kashmiri people to decide for themselves, in the end, you can't simply stop there and wait for that to happen and wait for those negotiations at some point to start. You've got to try and look at the immediate problems, and it seems to me there are some very real issues here about the recognition of Kashmiri identity in this country, and that would be a start if we can get a government to do that. And after the election, if I'm back from my seat and have a continued interest in local government matters, I'm certainly more than happy to engage with you in trying to put some pressure on, some influence over whoever the government is, to try and get some recognition of that. And that's something perhaps we could achieve as a very practical step. Dealing with the issues of disasters and humanitarian aid, looking at the issue of human rights and raising issues of concern and political prisoners. All those are issues that we ought to be able to, if we can't make progress on, at least raise as concerns, at least put pressure on, at least give publicity to, and some in terms of the recognition in this country, actually decide for ourselves, irrespective of what happens between the governments of India and Pakistan. So I think this is a very practical step. It's something we can all sign up to give and demonstrate our support. I'm more than happy to do so. So it's the two commitments really. Commitment to the manifesto as a here and now, something we can do, practical, move on, make a difference, but not compromising in any way the long-term objective of self-determination we all want to see.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
Delighted to be here. Thank you very
Thank
much
you
for the
very much.
invitation.
Thank you very much.
And I think we want a photograph with you.
Yes, that's right.
all MPs want photographs anyway.
We have something like this over there.
Okay.
We can use it for,
Right.
I'll hand over to my colleague, and then we will continue our proceedings, because obviously we are conscious of the time, and we have limited time, and I would welcome from the input from the colleagues, because today's agenda is primarily focused on that how can we take this manifesto forward and get these signatures from as many as current members of parliament, as well as the prospective parliamentary candidates from 10 major political parties across the United Kingdom. We may not be able to resolve the issue today, but the key thing is that there is a task in hand for us. If we manage to get at least 200 of the would-be MPs' signature on this manifesto in next 6 weeks, then afterward we will have an evidence which will be backed by the signed commitments to follow it up with the relevant government departments on all the aspects of this manifesto and these pledges, because they deal with all aspects of our life in this country, as well as our business, family, and heritage interests in Jammu and Kashmir. So I would like to particularly welcome and ask my colleagues who will be making their commitments that how can we make it happen, because our capacity is limited. We are a community organization based on volunteers and volunteer efforts. So I would request our representative from Tehreek-e-Kashmir to introduce and share with us their views. Thank you very much. Sardar sir, What's your full name? Sorry, Sardar?
Paris Iqbal.
Sardar Paris Iqbal. Sardar Paris Iqbal from Kashmir.
Hello and Assalamu alaikum. Very pleased to meet you here in this very precious and very sensitive place of Britain. My simple introduction is I am founder member of Kashmir and World Kashmir Freedom Movement both. I have been working long time with this both organization. And particularly I am from the border area. We call Dwarandi and Hajira. We are suffering through generations from crossfire. So that's why I have my own words to tell you here in this place. Since British left India, we are hanging in the air and fighting for justice and peace. And up till now, we are nowhere. Number two, India has left no room for us to continue overhanging. What are our sufferings? I'm not going to, this is not the right time to tell you, you knew everything very well. But in fact, what's going on, that the Kashmiri nation has decided, go, do and die. And we shall see later on what's going on. Because they are killing us every day. And Indian armed forces have no mercy for Kashmiri nation. See, no respect for British parliamentarian or XYZ parliamentarians or even for the Brussels, Commonwealth and everywhere. You see. So, what is left for us? We are requesting, we are crying, we are dying, and we are suffering. And at this place, I'm very glad to see my all of brothers and all of respected, honorable MPs and British parliamentarians. So please consider my humble request. I am from the border area. That please come in front and do something for this Kashmiri nation, because we are also human and we shall not wait maybe longer for the human rights appeals and for the political things and for the blah blah lot of other things. But we are fighting for the peace and justice. We have suffered very badly, and we request the world community, especially here in this hall, that please come in front and help us. We are in very, very bad situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I would like to ask Irshad Saab, who is representing here the Jammu and Kashmir Democratic Freedom Party. He is from the Indian administered Kashmir, to share his view. Irshad Malik.
Thank you, Aftab. I have read all the 5 points, and I was surprised when you in your intro said that the people of Jammu, Ladakh, Gilgit, Baltistan and Pakistani administered Kashmir. And I don't know why you left the valley of Kashmir, which is more suppressed part of the state. I am in regular contact with, as you know, many important leaders. And let me tell you that me and Aftab were working together since more than 25 years, when we were young kids. So he discusses with me everything regarding KDF, and naturally the more than 50% of leadership in Srinagar know what Aftab or the British diaspora is doing. So I want to tell you that we not only approve your efforts and this 5-point agenda, but support it in letter and spirit. And it is very important that we have been in trouble since 6 decades, and I think we have not been able to send our voice to the people who matter. And I will make only one suggestion. It is that, as you said, that you trained some young political activists and councillors on the recommendation of Mr. David Ward. So I will request to you that you need to make efforts to make some so-called senior Kashmiri party heads to realize that they should work together. And one more thing, that it is necessary that for development, peace is important, but for peace, justice is important. And to me, justice is not possible unless the people are given their rights. And the most important right which is pending, and nobody is giving heed to that, is that we Kashmiris, we deserve, and what have been promised to us by the UN Charter, Pakistan is signatory to it, India is signatory to it, that we should be given right to self-determination, and we must be asked to decide our political future without any pressure and without any coercion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really welcome your input, Shah. What we have done, as part of the process of writing up to this manifesto, we have consulted, I have sent the draft to each and every one of the key political parties. And last time when we were in the Parliament, one of the key pieces of advice from one of the members of the Parliamentary committee was that you should be reaching out to the members of the Indian community, diaspora community in the UK as well. And I am pleased to report back to all my members that the very first person who has commented on my manifesto was Professor Dabesh Anil, who's the head of the political department in the University of Westminster. And he gave his feedback, and I have taken on board his feedback. I have the feedback from Asma Khan Lon. She is the daughter of Amanullah Khan, the supreme head of the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, but more so she is the wife of the now Sajjad Lon, who's the minister in the new J&K government. I have feedback from the Professor Naila Ali Khan. She is the granddaughter of the Sheikh Abdullah, who was one of the towering leader of the Jammu and Kashmir. She has specifically contributed in the development of this manifesto, and I thank all of those people, as well as my colleagues from Ali and Jan from Gilgit. Then I have asked, if I go on to this time, I will report back each and every one of colleagues, and Sardar Aftab Khan, Dr. Javed Hayat, and so many who have actually contributed it. So what we have tried is that as part of the development of this manifesto, and Sardar Shaukat Ali Kashmiri Sahab, so as I said, there are a wide spectrum of the people who have contributed in putting this together. So what is the task for us is that how many pledges and sign up we can get from it. And that's why I have specifically thank and invite Ajib Saab, who is one of the earliest community leaders to come along, and his contribution and his support for the development of this one is pivotal, as well as Ghulam Hussain and many more. So when this process will finish, I will report back each and every one who has contributed from the first draft to the final, and then obviously we are going out. So now I would like to request Sadiq Subhani, Mr. Sadiq Subhani, who is the president of Jammu and Kashmir, the National Awami Party in the UK, for his few words, and particularly how his colleagues would help us to get maximum signatures from across the parties with within the UK. Sadiq Subhani.
Thank you very much, Aftab Sahab and KDF, for inviting us and providing us this opportunity to head to our learned members of Parliament and seeking their advice and their assistance, and then all of you as well, who has delivered tremendously good. In terms of manifesto, as you know, you had our support, wholeheartedly support from the beginning. And therefore, I believe there was nothing from me to add on, as I fully endorsed it from the beginning. And as of today and hereafter, during the time of elections, I would also assist you in reaching to the members of Parliament or PPCs to support this manifesto and to recognize us separately to other communities, as has been addressed by the members of Parliament. I see from this manifesto that it's very important that it binds us to one indigenous narrative, especially the Kashmiri diaspora community living in the UK. As the learned MP has said as well, that perhaps, you know, in the beginning, our Kashmiri people told them perhaps that, you know, who had best claim over the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And as today, I think it's very important that, you know, a lot of members of Parliament and the general public, British general public, is aware that Kashmiris are different ethnicity or community than India and Pakistan and any other community. And I think the responsibility at this moment lies upon us to reach out to these people, to be recognized, perhaps, and the elections are the best time to use your force and your vote for this sport. And it's a very right moment. You chose to launch this manifesto, and I'll fully support this, and I'll do whatever I can to make it successful and to bring best out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sadiq Subhani. Colleagues have this pieces, manifesto in front of them. I would like to ask you to fill that one in for your personal details as well, because it is not only for the prospective parliamentary candidates, but as members of the community. If you sign up to it, then your contact details will be with us, and we will be contacting you to take it forward and follow up on the next actions. I would particularly welcome one of my best friend, and I would say that who has actually, when I was 16-year-old, introduced me to work for Kashmir, Sardar. I think you will say that put you on spot, but as I said, that I was in Pakistan. I came very early from Kashmir to study in Pakistan. I didn't know much about it. I remember that day when I first time met Sajid in the Commonwealth Games. Commonwealth Games in Islamabad, and one of our projects, Sports for Communities, Connecting Communities, we will share it some other time. That is my passion, that when that day comes, when we as a Kashmiri will be representing in those games. But that begins in 1988. But Sajid Raja, for your contribution, that how can we take this forward to get maximum signatures?
I think I'm lost and forgotten too many things, but be honest to you, because the journey is so long and so slow. Once you're young, you have a lot of ambitions, thoughts, and ideas and idealism. But I'll try my level best. Whatever you give me lead, I will follow. And as Uncle Dalit, he's like our mentor in his age. I call him still uncle because he's so young, but still he's uncle for me. And we look upon you guys now, to old and young, and me and Aftab are more or less same age. And I think in this way we've been so long neglected, abused. We abuse ourselves as well. So a lot of combination. I'm in state of mind which I was not expecting even to say something. But I'll try my level best, pull myself, put things together. We'll try. At least we can achieve something here, which she's more or less my daughter age, and she's my niece in a way. And she's from Hemel. I know her family well, but I think probably we see each other the first time. I mean, this younger generation, we let down them badly. Rightly, Adalis apologized from her. Because I think last week, a couple of weeks, I went back to Pakistan and I was told Aftab by talking and said, "Oh, you went to Pakistan." Even though we forget ourselves, what we are, until we don't find these things and we get together and pull through and reunite and re-energize ourselves. And this is the right time. I give you a lot of credit for that, because this is the right time. So in this system, we can say our member of parliament, even though I talked to the member of parliament in our area. And I think I asked earlier Rashid because he's quite active as well in the community. So inshallah, we'll put our hand, whatever we can do, we will be with you.
Thank you, Sardar, for your contribution, and I'm really grateful that this long journey of 27 years, I'm not that much old, but obviously we started too early, and from that day till today, not a single day goes by, at least I can say in my life, that I haven't contributed a little bit or committed to something to carry on that part of the journey. And I'm very pleased to welcome Sir Gerald Kaufman to this meeting, who has been a long time friend of Kashmir, raising and empowering the voices of the people of Kashmir to share his views, and I would sincerely welcome his support for the British Kashmiri Manifesto, and would welcome his signature and support for the British Kashmiri Manifesto. Sir Gerald Kaufman.
Thank you very much. I hope you'll forgive me, but I have a parliamentary committee at 2:30, so I shan't be able to stay long. But I very much wanted to be here because, as you have been kind enough to point out, Kashmir has been at the centre of my parliamentary activities for a very long time now. I was responsible for the first debate on Kashmir at any party political conference when I was Shadow Foreign Secretary. I have been to Kashmir on a considerable number of occasions, and not only Azad Kashmir, but I have been to the line of control. I've been across the line of control, and I have visited Jammu as well. I've also visited Ladakh. So I have had the opportunity of seeing the terrible suffering that has been taking place there. When I went to Srinagar, though the Indians would not let me go into Srinagar, they said there would be a riot if I went into Srinagar. But I was at a government guest house just outside Srinagar, and people came to me for 7 hours to tell me of their suffering, the torture, the rape, the terrible time in refugee camps. I saw a school that had been destroyed by Indian guns, and I went up to the mountain on the other side of the line of control from which the Indians had shot down and destroyed the school. I think that it's very important to have this manifesto because Kashmir has been neglected by the international community. And it is not only inhuman, but it is also stupid for the international community not to take action on it, because there have been wars between Pakistan and India on this issue. Both powers are nuclear armed powers, The head of the CIA said that that confrontation was the most dangerous confrontation in the world. He said that when he gave evidence to the United States Senate, and yet nothing is done by the outside community. Even if they don't care about the humanitarian suffering which takes place in Kashmir, even if they don't care about the terrible infliction on the Vale of Kashmir, which will be full of tourists having a wonderful time, but instead people are terrified to go there. If they didn't care about that, if they didn't care about the suffering that we all know about, and on which I have heard oral evidence when I have been there, and I've been not only to Muzaffarabad and to Baramulla, and they wouldn't let me into Baramulla either. They said that it would be dangerous for me to go to Baramulla. Well, I would have liked to decide on my own risk. But I won't say I know more than anybody else in this room about this terrible subject, but I do have a very great deal of experience, and it breaks my heart. But having a broken heart doesn't solve anything. What is essential is that we push and push and push and push, and until the international community gets involved. This present government has said, the former minister who was dismissed, Alistair Burt, he said that this is not a matter in which this government will involve itself. But this government must involve itself. And that is why this manifesto is so important. I have signed it. I will make clear to the people whom I represent in Parliament and whom I seek to represent again of my complete support. Yesterday we had a Pakistan Day event, a huge Pakistan Day event in my constituency, and of course this was an issue yesterday evening on Pakistan Day, the exact 75th anniversary since the Quaid-e-Azam got the decision which launched Pakistan. I give you my pledge that I shall remain active on this, and I shall not rest. Thank you very much.
Jammu Kashmiri, the chairman of the All Parties National Independence Alliance in the UK.
Thank you. I would like to extend thanks to Sardar Aftab MP and KDF as the chairman of JKNLA. The British Kashmiri Manifesto and extended full cooperation. We hope this manifesto will provide British Kashmiri community an opportunity to make their issue, key points, and the agenda for policymakers at local, national, and international level. We will contact candidates from all parties and make their aware this common community manifesto. India, Pakistan, and occupation, free Kashmir. Thank you very much.
We welcome Nic Dakin MP. I haven't met before, but thank you very much for joining us over here. And we would very much welcome your support for the British Kashmiri Manifesto. And now I would like to invite our Honourable Member of Parliament to share his views with us.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. I've just dropped in for 5 minutes, so apologies for being so brief. Obviously, you're spending a lot of time on this, both in this meeting and outside this meeting, and it clearly is the issue of Kashmir and the right of the Kashmiri people for self-determination is a long-standing injustice which is recognised by the United Nations, and I'm very happy to continue to support getting justice for the people of Kashmir, many of whom live in my constituency, who have relatives still living in Kashmir.
we are particularly grateful that in this meeting, and particularly in the development of this manifesto, we have the support and contribution from 3 generations of the Kashmiris living in this country. So this is not something which we are doing something new over here. I'm so pleased that the most senior political activists who have started long ago this struggle in this country, some of them we are fortunate, are with us, as Ajib Saab, Ghulam Hussain Saab, and now would like to welcome Sayyid Zulfikar Ali Shah Saab from Reading, who has contributed a lot, and this is their work legacy which we are taking to the next level. Sayyid Zulfikar Shah from Reading.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Actually, I was away from Britain for at least 4, 5, 6 months, so I just came in, and I'm very grateful your struggle, I think we need that. This was a long time ago. We should have this type of manifesto long time ago. But nevertheless, I think that's very good. I'm very grateful that the MPs, those who have come here and they supported us. I have informed my MPs, and one of them was only answered that he is busy, he can't come. Fact of the matter is, it is British problem. I think it was created from the beginning, British India, just finishing, and the British forces went in because of thugs and so on. But Kashmiri people didn't want to fight anything or to do that. It was Nehru who played a very tricky play and captured that area. Now I'm fed up with this saying that Pakistan is helping us. Pakistan is not helping us. They are destroying the Kashmir problem, and we request to the British government to help us and recognize us. And it's about time that we've been living here for over 50 years, and we are about, I think people of this country should recognize us. We have a country which is beautiful for the whole world, and the whole world was visiting there. And I don't know why the powers of the world are quiet on this, because there's both parties, our neighbors are not happy, not interested in our freedom, and so I think the manifesto is about freedom of Kashmiris, and I think I endorse it because I was away, and I've seen now, I think, and I'm very grateful member of Parliament, those who have recognized us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to request the chief organizer of the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, Mr. Sardar Aftab Khan, to share his views that how the colleagues from the KDF would like to support in taking this manifesto forward and signed as much as possible.
Thank you very much, Kasa and Danczuk, who organized this such a fantastic brainstorming session where we can assess our capabilities and how we can drive the pre-election campaign, especially concerning Kashmir. I think this agenda is so comprehensive, precise, and especially represent all Kashmiri segments, and especially all Kashmiri regions. I being a member of JKLF, Chief Organizer of JKLF, fully endorse this agenda, and we promise as a party member and that we will be the part of this agenda, and this is the right time that we can rightly active in diaspora Kashmir community, because we have a solid basis to raise the Kashmir issue with the Britain. Whether it's a historical, which is started by the Amritsar Treaty, and it was included in the division of subcontinent. And the main reason we are active here, very vibrant community, and our back home is flare up with human rights violation, which is not recorded in the Britain and in the Britain Parliament, but it's in the international charities as well, like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. So I think that we people sitting here belong from Kashmir. We have a right time to active, to take the participation across the parties contesting in the elections, and whether they are elected or not. So we can take the signature from there, so they can regard that signature after the elections when we contact with them, and we have a right time and right manifesto, and I as a JKLF member fully endorse this 5-point agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abdul. Thank you. I really appreciate that. One of the key part of our work is that how we ensure that we make this manifesto as a community voice, and we reach out to each and every political party, no matter which affiliation as an individual we have with any political party, but only Kashmir, as our members of parliament from across the spectrum, from the Conservatives, from the Liberal, from the Liberal Democrats, and Green, and all the political parties, that we take it as a community issue, and we make it as a doorstep issue. So we will be sharing with you the wider briefing paper along with it, which is the overall the reason why we are launching this one as well. So please share that one with the members of the community, so that they can understand what are the key strategic issues, and how can we make this one as a doorstep issue for every politician who can listen to it when they knock on the door, that this is one of the aspects of our issues, because this does not address only what's going on in India and Pakistan. It is about our lives in the Great Britain as a communities. We are the most marginalized, one of the most marginalized and underrepresented community. I would like to say this one, that we might have representation. In representative democracy, you might have representation, which does not necessarily mean that you have an influence. So to make influence, we need to inform the policy making process. And how can we make that input into the policy making process, as David Ward and other honorable members of parliament mentioned, that we need to listen and understand the process. And hopefully in future, when David will be back, we will be working with him and all the other members of parliament on the basis of their pledges, that if on the 5 points, if we can say that 3 or 4 members of parliament lead on 1 point of this manifesto, and we achieve that one in next parliament, that would be great. And then it depends on the interest and the area of their specific focus as well. So we need to be smart, we need to understand the process, and we need to build our capacity. And this is the time that we go out within our communities and we seek volunteers, and we get registered our volunteers through our online website, so that they can then in the future take this forward. And that's the way we make it a real, genuine, indigenous Kashmiri, British Kashmiri initiative, which is designed by us, informed by us, and developed by us, and we're taking it forward to the next level. And I would like to ask our colleague from Birmingham, who has been a key member of the Kashmir Development Foundation in terms of his volunteerism and his voluntary support and voluntary action, Sardar Zia, to share his views from the Midland, that how can we are taking it, what's the plans in the Midland region to take this forward.
Thank you very much, Aftab sir. I came from Birmingham, and basically, as a member of Kashmiri diaspora representative in West Midland, we started this manifesto to distribute door to door, and especially we focus on the last year of distribute and ask the British community member who can, when someone can, like any candidate to their doorsteps, they can ask to pledge and sign this. So I request all my other colleagues who came from different cities of the United Kingdom, they can do the same things, so we can collectively enhance and we can collectively participate in this election and can get the supports from the candidates from across the all parties. And I'd recently been actually visited Kathmandu, where I met many of the other colleagues from across the LOC, and they are basically very much appreciated these efforts, and they want to do some lobbying in the British Parliament, and this is the right, I think, approach and way to do the lobbying in the British Parliament to resolve the Kashmir issue in peaceful means. And I will be very thankful on the behalf of Kashmir Development Foundation to all the participants today who came to this reception and gave us support. Thank you very much.
I would like to ask Mr. Ghulam Hussain, who is the President of Kashmir Freedom Movement and also Vice Chair of the Jammu and Kashmir National Independence Alliance, as well as the member of the Leeds City Council and the lead member, I believe, on the communities in the cabinet over there as well. I have the responsibility to share his views and how in Leeds region he will envisage to take this forward. Mr. Lamson.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much to Sardar Aftab Sahab and KDF for organizing this event, and thank you to a number of MPs who found the time to come here. I am going to make a general statement to start with, which is that I feel that it is very important for the British Kashmiri community and all the mainstream parties in this country to work in a lasting partnership, both starting with the Kashmiris in this country for addressing the inequality and injustice, but also in all the parts of Kashmir, without naming whether it is Valley or Jammu or etc., all the parts of Kashmir. And I think sometime when we discuss this, some people think that there is less violation in one, more in the other, and as David Ward MP for Bradford mentioned earlier on, and when people talk of Azad Kashmir, it's supposed to be independent, but in reality, sometimes it isn't. And I was in Geneva with a few other colleagues from here last week, and we were addressing a similar thing. And one thing which I said, that in Kashmir, we have a government in Azad Kashmir, so to speak, independent Kashmir. We've got a Prime Minister, we've got a Supreme Court, but we do not have a country. Pakistan, our neighbor and friend, has never recognized us. If they had recognized, things would have been a lot simpler. I think we need not apologize completely, although I think we have failed, but we have made a lot of effort. I remember driving with a dozen of other people, including yourself, to Plymouth to speak to the census office there. We had a meeting. I remember we going to Gerald Kaufman. I remember when he was the Foreign Secretary. I remember going to Tarek Fetchett, my friend from Leeds Central, who was the minister at that stage. And they all said that we will do something, and some people did make effort. but we have failed. People like David and Simon Danczuk have been working, but they have failed as well in the last 4 or 5 years. And I think the failure, I hope you don't mind, but it is a relative thing. It's not your failure in trying, but it's a failure in achieving. So I think what we need to do is be more resolute. And in practical terms, obviously what we can do, I started with my own MP, Fabian Hamilton, who apologized. He couldn't be here. He's giving a speech at one of the universities, a long-standing commitment. But he was here before the start of the meeting. He signed the pledge and he's given his commitment. I have talked to 2 or 3 other candidates from Leeds, and they have pledged that they will sign as well. So for 8 MPs, if we take the major parties in Leeds, there are something like 24 candidates, even more if you take on the model of 10 major parties. So each one of us go back to our constituencies and we can get started there on a practical basis. And I think once we do that, we need to be able to get the message to our youngsters. Yes, we have failed in making them aware of the issue, and we need to take that on board. We have had this kind of initiatives before. I remember Barrister Asif Khan from Kashmir Freedom Movement doing this kind of work in late 90s. We wrote to all the parliamentary candidates. We made a dossier of their responses. We tried to follow, but things die. I think what we need to do going forward is we need to keep our effort consistent, and we need to be on the tail of our MPs who are supporting it, but more important than they're using their help, we need to get on those who are not supporting us, so that the British government, who plays a pivotal role in the world at the moment and in the Europe, I think we need to continue our effort and we need to be united. And as Ajib Sahab said, we have reached a consensus, and I think it's a good thing that we must continue to work and not dwell on our differences, but concentrate on our common points. So let us not sort of be worried. I think we should accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative and move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ghulam Hussain, for your very valuable contribution. And when I look at, as I was saying that, Sajid, when he introduced me to Kashmir, I was a Kashmiri, in 1988 when I was 16-year-old. In life, I think it is not the failure, we are not successful yet. Failure is that when you accept that there is no hope, there is no way, and you resign to continue your struggle, then you say that you are failed. But if you believe and your desire is alive, there is no failure. It might be you rest, you take stock of what happened, you review where you have been and how you've been moving forward, and then you replan how can you take it forward. So that is the key in looking back and taking stock of all the efforts which have been made so far, and by taking them all together and learning the lessons from those struggles and our efforts, we refocus ourselves on manageable and achievable targets. Sometimes, I think in life, we set our goals too high. We not recognize, we driven by our emotions, and we do not manage the necessary capacity to support our efforts and our initiatives to achieve our goals. So that's why what we are trying to do, at least within our sphere of our work, within the Kashmir Development Foundation and our strategic business plan, that look at the achievable things, what we can do in next 3 years and what we can do in next 5 years. So this is, as I said, and I would again welcome any contribution, because this is not a final document as say. This is what we are setting our goals, these 5 points for next 5 years. There will be situation will be changed. There will be new things coming up. So please do continue to be part of this journey, of this continuous input in the development, refining of our strategy and our action in the communities. And that's what we want to take it forward. And we need the support of all the senior colleagues who have been through this process before us. As I said at the very outset in the earlier, we are not the new ones doing something new. So please share with us where you might have some obstacles, so that we've been aware of that one, that how can we bypass that. We might not dismantle that wall, but we can go around it, because there is no point to headbutting against a wall which you can't, dismantle. You can find a way around, and that's how we can take it forward. And to conclude, I would again request Ajib Saab to conclude this meeting, because we are nearing the end of this event. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much. I think what has been the satisfactory outcome of this meeting is that no one actually said that they don't want to endorse this manifesto or they disagree with it. It's one of the rare occasions when I find that people are agreeing to something unanimously, and that augurs well for the future campaign of this nature. I think we've got to appreciate Sardar Saab for a lot of time and efforts which he has put into the preparation of this document by consulting many of you, but many of those who are not present here. And one of the things which interested me when he talked to me and he sent me the copy of this manifesto was that it doesn't talk about bloodshed. It doesn't talk about jihad. It doesn't talk about any form of violence. And I'll tell you why I agree with him is this. We have gone through that long process. And what we have achieved. As a matter of fact, we lost some of the support which I thought was there for us Kashmiris, for our struggle. But because of this violence and all these kind of things, I think we did not get anywhere. I agree with you entirely when you say, or use the word of review. What has been wrong with the Kashmiri struggle, in my opinion, is that we never reviewed our strategy. We never reviewed our policy. And with all respect, and I say I'm not a member of any political organization, either in the so-called Azad Kashmir or occupied area, or even in Pakistan. The only party I have been member for the past 46 years is the Labour Party. But in this country, if a policy seems to be not working, then we always try to review it, find the new ways, so that it becomes more effective. And here, at least, we've got a new approach in this document, which hasn't been tried before. But at least let us try it. I'm not saying it's a sacrosanct, as you said, document. It can be reviewed after 12 months. It can be changed. It can be altered. But please, I beg you, at least to agree something based on which we can engage ourselves in a practical work, instead of all the time expressing our rhetorics which mean nothing. Coming to the support of our elected members, I'm always grateful. With most of those people who came to sign it, I've either shared platforms with them a long time ago, some of them can remember, can't remember. And with some of them, I worked on this very issue of Kashmir. And David is a living testimony to that. But in one of the public meetings, I think in Bradford, I did say that I'm not going to be a party to any organization which continues to talk and do nothing. I'm fed up with that. And obviously I'm too old now to
become emotionally involved in this and that. But I think two things are missing, even in this meeting. I'm glad this young lady from Luton who has taken the trouble to come here and participate in this meeting. Where are Kashmiri women? They are the most sufferers in this process, who have lost their children, who have lost their brothers, who have lost their husbands. They have been raped, and they have been abused, and yet we are shy of engaging them in our struggle. They are the ones who can indoctrinate their children, who can educate their young sons and daughters, who can tell them the narrative of Kashmir. So I'm asking you, number one, please, wherever you live, try to engage them. Most frequently, I'm asked the question, why we have failed to engage in this struggle of young people? Why we haven't made them interested? Why they are not coming forward? We people of the first generation are not going to be here forever. I'm glad to see some of young people here. We need young people taking active part in this struggle, both young men and women. Right. The parliamentarians or any politician, they only respond to pressure. I've been one of those for some 25 years. I deliberately did not want to be abrasive whilst they were here in my first remarks, because obviously we need their support. But let us see what they do within the next 12 months and 2 years. Some of those may not be able to succeed in their elections. Those who are successful, we should continue to chase them. We will continue to exert some kind of polite pressure on them. We should continue to ask the questions to them. What is happening in Westminster? What you are doing about the Kashmir? But that is not sufficient. Our duty is to continue to inform them of some of the abuses of human rights. There was someone, I think here, gave the very classical good example of Javed and his mother who was there. There are many similar and such examples. They need information. The people sitting here in the House of Commons. But it's our duty to feed them with these kind of stories. And finally, I always said, and I've said it, why don't we get together? Why we are trying to keep, or to cling rather, to our own thrones. There is no throne. We are deluding ourselves. The only throne we can expect is the freedom of our nation. And whoever then is elected to be on the throne will be entitled to be sitting on the throne. We're nobodies. We are ordinary Kashmiris. And why do we try to build our own small worlds? Is that because of our egoism? If that is the case, then let us get rid of that egoism. Let's get together. Unity is strength. I will continue to support the cause of Kashmiri in the practical ways as long as I live.
Thank you.
Recommend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, and it's our time now, 3 o'clock, and thank you very much for each and every one of the colleagues who have attended, and thank you, David, for being with us for such a long time, and we will continue.